Well, hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this session. My name is Lynn Bradley, and I'm here with colleagues Geetha Selvaretnam and Yunhyong, and we want to talk to you today about using opinion mining to understand student feedback on teaching. So I suspect that for most people watching this presentation today, you've been in a similar position to us, where you've received the email to tell you that some feedback from students is in, and you click on the link with trepidation to see what the students have said about your course. Sometimes that feedback is very positive, sometimes there can be criticisms, but mostly it's enormous, it's huge, and it can be very overwhelming indeed to try and cope with the vast amounts of feedback that we receive. So what we wanted to do was to look at two aspects. We wanted to look at opinion mining as a form of learning analytics to help us understand the themes and the issues contained within the feedback that we get. And we also wanted to explore the links between the structured and unstructured feedback that we receive. Now, I'll show you the forms that we receive in Glasgow, and they may be similar to the feedback forms which you also receive. We use a system called EVASYS, and every course requests the students to fill in a survey towards the end of the course on using this EVASYS software. It's then analysed by our admin teams and provided to course coordinators. Now, some of it is extremely easy to interpret, so there are some core questions where you can see that the data is presented in bar charts, where we hope we get lots of lovely blue lines on the left-hand side. We don't want anything on the right-hand side, and we're not too sure what goes on in the middle. Do students see that as a neutral neither nor? We're not sure what's going on there. But what's more complicated is when we get to the open questions and the unstructured text, because here you can have hundreds and hundreds of lines of comment. Some of the comments can be long, a number of sentences, and some of them can just be a single word. So that's problematic when you're trying to pull out themes, when you're trying to quantify how strongly students might feel about an issue. And when we get to the next question, how could the course be improved? That's not helped. This ambiguity can make it difficult to understand what students mean. If you look at the fourth bullet point down here, the student has said good enough. Now, does the student mean that it will do, or do they mean that actually it is good and you don't need to do anything to improve it? It's difficult to tell. And then the comments above that about the tutorials, well, there are two comments there in a large class. Is that a significant issue that many students feel strongly about, but only two have actually spoken about it? Are any of these comments linked to students who are less happy about the course when they filled in their responses to the structured comments? We don't know. We don't know because we cannot tell what one single student is saying. We can only tell, we only get the information on this collective basis. So when it comes to us then using that information, and ultimately we want to use it to improve our teaching, but the first stage is to analyse the feedback and then respond to students to tell them what we've taken from it. It's quite straightforward when it comes to the structured text, but once we get into the positive feedback areas for enhancement, that's more difficult because there we're having to pull out themes which might be obscure, and we also have to go over our own cognitive challenges where, you know, who likes being criticised, and one negative comment can make you feel bad for a couple of hours. It might overshadow the positive comments that you receive. Sometimes you can be resistant to the feedback if you spent a lot of time developing a course and the student criticises that part of it. We may feel defensive, or actually We may accept that students might not like something, but for pedagogical reasons, we believe that it's still important to include it in the course. And when we look at the quantitative versus qualitative data, we can see from this research, for example, by Newman and Joyner, that when they looked at the relationship between the quantitative data along the bottom and the qualitative data on the y-axis, they found that there was a relationship. So students who responded less positively about the course tended to make more negative comments and vice versa, but it wasn't a straight line. And what this also suggests is that students who score 3 for the quantitative data do actually have opinions. So they may actually feel positive or they may actually feel negative about a course, and we can't assume that just because they've scored a 3, they're quite relaxed and it's a neither nor situation. So the opinion mining gives us a way then of taking that data that we have in our EVASIS forms and actually analysing the sentiment contained within the language. So it's a way in which we can look at the phrases that are used, the words that are used in the context that they sit in, to actually assess how many positive statements there are, how many negative and how many neutral statements. So before I hand over to Yunhyong, I just want to check that on this prior research slide that there isn't anything here that I haven't mentioned already. Yes, so I think I've covered these points. I just would like to emphasise the final point here, that opinion mining is not there to replace the lecturer's analysis of feedback. It's there to support and help us, and we still have to apply our pedagogic judgment. So I'm going to hand over to Yunhyong now.
Thank you, Lynn. So I just want to point out some kind of general design that we had in mind. So as part of what Lynn suggested that we are going to explore in opinion mining, we actually developed a student opinion miner as part of the funded project to incorporate several different things, and there were some principles around it. First of all, just to be clear, we were not aiming to have a very accurate sentiment analysis tool, partly because of what Lynn mentioned, that it's meant to complement what humans are able to examine for themselves and analyze. It's not meant to replace it. So we weren't aiming for the best performance. In that light, we used the pre-existing module, which is called Emotional, developed by Tom de Smet and colleagues at University of Antwerp. And this was implemented by Tim Kopiters, who and based on the lexicon of a dictionary. So it's basically just picking up unscored lexicon around positivity or negativity, such as amazing or good or bad, terrible, and things of this sort, and then coming up with scores for each of the sentences. Can you go to the next slide, please? And in conjunction with this, there were 2 other principles. One was around the software that we used to develop it. We wanted something that was easily adaptable across different systems. So we tended to use web technology related software, programming languages such as JavaScript or React.js and so on. And at the same time, we wanted to combat some of the things Lynn mentioned as cognitive barriers, such as being anchored to negative comments and things of this sort. And one of the ways we thought might be useful in combating this is through presenting the negative and positive comments on the same page, also being able to explore more of the issues around this thing Lynn mentioned about when you have score 3, what it means, and you want to relate it to the qualitative comments that the person who gave it score 3 mentioned. So being able to filter unstructured data in terms of the structured data and so on seem to be important. Likewise, we wanted to kind of make it engaging, so make it pleasing, but also reflect some of the specific aspects that are associated to any negative or positive comments. So having things like frequencies of words related to that positive comment. So could you go to the next slide, please? And we tested this we had some case studies across different courses. Some of it was undergraduate courses, some of it was postgraduate courses. And as you can see here in this table, it ranged all the way from just 24 people to over 300 students. So it had a variation of different cohorts as well as different response rate, but most of the people who responded to the feedback form itself also consented to have be included in the study, which was good. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is what the student opinion minor looks like in the first instance, the first page. And you can see there's a label called load data. You click on that and it allows you to load comma separated value data, which might come from an Excel sheet or something else, which can convert it to this format. Can you go to the next slide, please? Once you load the data, this is what it looks like. And if you remember from Lynn's slide earlier in the EVASys data, it summarized the statistics for each of the questions. This page here actually is summarizing the entire data set. So in the questionnaire at Glasgow, it's usually the lower scores that are good. So when you agree, you take the lower scores as opposed to the higher scores. So here, it would show that the lower scores would be the better scores, but it does show you in general how many you could have had, how many points it could add up to, and how many points you've got in response to all the questions. So you can see that it has many different representations of how this is distributed, which allows you to look at many different aspects of the data. And now I'm going to turn it over to Geetha, who will talk about more specific experiences with the features of the opinion minor.
Oh, thank you, Yunhyong. So this was actually quite a fantastic project to have been involved in. So I tested this app using 3 of my courses. One course had about 25 students, another one more than 100, and another one even more, 300 plus students. And Lynn also tested this on 3 of her courses, including undergraduate and postgraduate students. And I would say for the first time in my long teaching career, I look at student evaluation and feedback with excitement and really wanting to dig into what they have to say. It was a little bit like looking at some economics data set, and analyze. So it was really very nice. And even negative comments, actually, rather than making me feel negative and upset, it actually created a bit of an intrigue within me to try and dig in as to why they are saying this and all that, So it was quite a nice experience, and I will carry on using this app more and more. So let's see more about what this app can do for us. So non-textual questions. So as Lynn showed us, we have some Likert type questions where students will give answers. For example, teaching staff explain things well. So strongly agree, and so on. So one thing that we can do is to filter out the questions that we are really interested in looking into deeply. So maybe tick one or few of those. And then when you do that, Again, we will get this nice colorful representation. Many of these the output for non-textual questions can easily be also obtained from our current system without using the app. But this is much more pleasing to the eye, and quickly it will give us more information. But other than that, I wouldn't say that this was the main thing, you know. But if you keep going, we can get a lot more out of this app. So let's look at the other next slide with the filtering features. So what we can actually do is, let's say a student has said the course, I understood what is expected of me in this course. And many students are saying very bad things about this, giving a very negative comment. So 4 or 5. So what we can do is tick 4 or 5 for this particular question, and check what these particular students are saying about other things, like lecturer explained things well, course was intellectually stimulating and things. So because that would tell us, okay, they didn't like this one part of it, but they are okay with the others. Or we can see whether they are actually negative about everything else, you know. So we were particularly interested, as Lynn has already spoken about, this middle, the students who just chicken out and give this neutral answer of 3. So let's see, I am satisfied with the overall quality of the course. And if the student has ticked 3, so we just tick that and see what they have said about everything else. So if you look at this nicely, you know, so we had in this particular thing, we had 8 students who said, who were neutral for this particular question. But if you look at everything else, the answers they have ticked for all the other questions, it is not that negative. So, for example, the criteria used in marking have been made clear in advance. 5 of them have agreed, whereas only 3. And on the whole, when you look at it, these neutral guys are quite, you know, more positive towards the course, I would say. But in some cases, it may not be the situation, you know. So we cannot always think, oh, neutral means positive. It's not so. So this way, you can really check what these students are saying. Now we move on to the textual output, which Lynn showed how we were all drowning in these 300 plus students writing so much, and I have to wade through all that and only picking up certain things which are, you know, which just strikes you, which are vehemently written. So the way this app has been created, there are 3 different aspects which are represented in these different colors, which can be very useful and insightful. So the number of words, so according to the number of words, this app will nicely tell us. The students are talking a lot about lectures, interesting and things like that, you know. So it picks up the higher number of words which are of a positive sentiment. But then you see some students are talking about lectures, some are saying lecturer, lecturers, all these things may be the same thing. So there's another thing that this app does. It does this stemmed word sort of analysis, or it does its magic, and it will create this other yellow color graph, where, as you can see, many students are saying very nice things about lecturers. This actually is about Lynn's course, so it's all about her. So very nice. But then the third one, the purple one, is what is most interesting for me. It gives us the phrases which have this positive aspect to it, and it throws much more light into what the students really like. So very interesting topics, good slides, explanation is very good, and things like that, you know. So we can look at these, which will give us some idea as to what are the real aspects that the students feel positive about. And another nice feature of this is it also gives us the top 5 comments and the bottom 5 comments. Sometimes we might actually see one of the bottom 5 comments and think that is the greatest of all. but maybe that is not the thing. Then it just say, you know, not that many students have said this point. So you just look at the main aspects, which are the top 5. I mean, you can still look at the bottom 5, but this is a nice aspect to it. Now, the same thing about the other textual question that we use in the University of Glasgow. How could this course be improved? So these are what students tell us, their suggestions. And here also the same thing, you know. So these are things that we would look at and think whether we need to make any improvements to the course. So as you say, many students are talking about the exams, the tutorials, and things like that, you know, give us solutions to the questions to be expected. But these are very nice to really know how many students are really saying. So even though there are 300 students, it really condenses all of this into this nice compact format so that we can really use this. Another thing that I like about this is that it also gives us the largest comment. Because some students, there might be 1 or 2 students who write a big essay, you know, when they give a feedback. And we might actually get caught into everything that particular student says. It might be a good thing, but it is good to be aware of that we are not only concentrating on that and leaving out everyone else's comments. So it's good that this also picks it up. The other point that I want to make, if we go to the next slide, is you know, because we have the top 5 comments and the bottom 5 comments, I also like to see all the comments which are condensed, all the main points that this app is capturing from the feedback, not only the top 5 and the bottom 5, you know. And you can easily just order it from the highest to the lowest, and you can scroll through to see what are the things that the students are saying, especially this one, where the students give the phrases, the bigrams. I think it's pronounced that way, but I have used this because I want to see everything so that it gives me a better picture. Okay, so what have we found from this exercise by using this app? One of the things that I want to reiterate is that this app has been designed in such a way that it is very easy for us to use. All we had to do was to ask the person who was in charge of this, the student evaluation of teaching, that aspect, the EVASYS system, for the Excel sheet in the CSV format. So we just got it, and all we have to do is load it onto the app. Very easily done. And hey presto, we have all these nice colorful images. The other thing, as I said, you know, teachers will approach this with such a positive mindset that we can really get very good informative things out of this, of the student evaluation, rather than seeing it as a negative thing or some kind of a monitoring device. Especially for academics, it's you can analyze and really get good insights into what we can do to improve the course and what are the things that we need to keep doing, because the student, it is quite a good thing. So opinion mining, it extracts more value, obviously, than us just reading through with our own eyes. And it, as I said, it condenses all this, so much of information into this nice, colorful, informative output. Then students who select the middle score, you can explore more into what they are really saying. And I want to say something about reducing cognitive biases. Definitely true. This is such an important thing, whatever, you know, however much we try not to be. You know, when we read some comments which are very strongly worded, we can be swayed by those, or if we might actually read the things we want to really read, so that we keep doing the things that we want to do. So for example, I had a 2-stage exam in one of my courses, and there were one comment, which were 1 or 2 comments maybe, which were very negative about it. So I thought, you know, maybe the students don't like it, and was even planning to drop the whole thing. But when I used the OM, this opinion mining app, it showed that many students have actually said very nice things about it. And even for how can this course be improved, they are saying things like, keep doing assessments like what you have done in this 2-stage exam. So that was very good. And there are plenty of other examples I can give you, but I won't carry on. But it definitely can help us reduce cognitive biases. So what are the next steps and how can we carry on with this project? So first of all, we can accept that this is an app which can aid us, it can help us, but it definitely does require our own human interpretation. And the other thing is this app definitely can be developed further. We recognize that, provided we get some nice funding for it. So one thing we would like to do is to make a web-based version of this app, which would be easier for us to use. And also the filtering process can be a bit better, it can be improved. It's already nice, but it can be improved. One of the things is, search facilities where if I want to search lecture recording, so if I can just write recording and try and search it, and everything that students have said about recording will pop up, something like that, it would be nice. Then we have to test this more widely. It is only 2 of us who have tested it on 6 courses, and we can test this on also the impact of this on teaching and what we have actually done because of using this app. So that is something we haven't really done. We have, done it informally, but we haven't really tested this formally. So we can do more on that. Okay, so Lynn is also showing some references of the things that she spoke about.